I was an ugly kid. I was fat. I had bad teeth. Being ugly as a man makes every single aspect of your life more difficult. It makes dating pretty much impossible. Women want nothing to do with you. People just don't treat you very well in general. It's like you're always facing an uphill battle no matter what you do. So imagine being ugly as a kid and what that does to you mentally as you're growing up and your brain's still developing. Even for guys that have a major glow up later on and end up okay looking as an adult, the damage is still there from growing up ugly. Because when you're young and you don't get treated well, and I'm not talking about being bullied necessarily. In my case, I wasn't really bullied all that much. But when you're growing up and the other kids in your class don't want to play with you, they don't want to talk to you, and you can tell the way your teachers and other adults treat you versus how they treat other kids, you can just tell it's different. It's hard. So today I want to talk about some of my experiences growing up ugly. And I think I actually have kind of a unique experience in that I was ugly as a kid, but then I had a glow up when I was around 16 to 18. But then I started going bald at an early age, and I ended up being ugly again. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum, and it was night and day how I got treated at, say, 12 years old compared to how I got treated when I was 18 and I was actually good looking. But having that glow up, that's how I know that the lasting damage from being unattractive as a kid, that messes you up mentally in a way that it makes it hard to have any social success, even if you get to the point where you look like someone that would be successful. To start off, my two biggest problems as a kid were probably A, that I was fat, and B, I had crooked teeth. Now, I wasn't even that fat, really. Like, I wasn't obese, but I was chubby, and I was overweight enough that it was something that was always on my mind as a kid. I never wanted to take my shirt off. By the time I was like 9 or 10, I was one of those kids that insisted on wearing my shirt in the pool. And I remember just always being uncomfortable. Like, just wearing pants was uncomfortable because I was fat. If you've ever seen the movie Heavyweights, I remember really identifying with the kids in that movie. I'm pretty sure I wasn't as fat as those kids, but I was fat enough to where I was considered a fat kid. Okay, no girls in my class ever had a crush on me. I remember one time some other boys in my class came up to me and they were telling me to laugh like the Pillsbury Doughboy when they poked me in the belly. They were doing it to each other at first, but then one of them was like, "Oh, do it to Loser Maxing! Poke Loser Maxing in the belly! It's perfect!" So they poked my belly, and I did the stupid little laugh. That might have been my first foray into Jester Maxing, now that I think about it. But I was just so desperate, even back then, just so desperate for friendship that, yeah, I laughed like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I let them poke me in the belly and I laughed. I was just happy they were including me. One of my most brutal childhood memories was way back in second grade. I had a crush on this girl in my class. Well, we had one of those fundraisers. I don't know if they still do this, but back in the 90s, we would have these fundraisers every year where they would have all the kids go door to door selling like wrapping paper and popcorn and random things like that out of this catalog. And you would win tokens based on how much you sold. Then they would have a day where they come set up tables in the gym with all these different cheap plastic toys and stuff that you could buy with your tokens. The prizes were pretty similar to what you would see at an arcade. I'm pretty sure it was basically a scam. But either way, I remember I only had enough tokens to get a few things. I remember I got one of those plastic lightsabers that extends. But they also had a table with a bunch of plastic jewelry, so I had the idea that I would use the last of my precious tokens to buy a little plastic ring for my crush. I don't know if that's a natural human inclination, the inclination to simp, Or maybe I was just brainwashed by TV shows like Boy Meets World or whatever I was watching at the time. But I was probably like, I don't know, 8 years old. I know it was the second grade. And all the way back then, I already felt like simping. And I felt like giving my crush a ring that I worked hard to afford. Because it's not easy as a shy little kid going and knocking on your neighbor's doors trying to sell them wrapping paper. So I earned those tokens like a man. And I wanted to use those tokens to simp for my crush. So I bought the ring. It was a little plastic ring with a plastic ruby in it. Then I remember I was so afraid to actually give it to the girl. My mom was with me because this was after school hours when they had the setup where you could buy all the prizes. And I remember just begging my mom to give the ring to my crush for me, but she wouldn't do it. So then I was like, well, forget it then. I'll just keep the ring. But my mom wasn't having it. So just think about this. I was only in the second grade, but already I was deathly afraid of rejection because I already had enough experience by then to know that I was ugly. But yeah, I just remember arguing with my mom about it, trying to get out of it. Then eventually I begrudgingly walked over to my crush and I reached out to give her the ring. And people always leave comments whenever I tell these stories from my childhood, like, how do you remember something that happened when you were in the second grade? And it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's because it was traumatic. Or maybe it's just because I do not have an intellectual disability. I think most people probably should have some memories from when you're that age. It's not like I remember every little thing that happened, but anyways, I tried to give this girl this shitty little plastic ring, and she refused. I remember she said, gross. She called me gross. But then her mom made her accept the ring. And then I ran back over to my mom. And a few minutes later, the girl came over to me and she said, thank you, very angrily. Her mom was obviously making her do it. But yeah, I get that kids don't understand social niceties and everything. But I have a feeling if it had been any other boy in my class that was giving her the ring, she probably would have been nicer about it. I don't think she would have called them gross like she did with me. Now, say what you want, but that moment has stuck with me to this day. It was just one of those moments that let me know early on, I'm ugly. I am unwanted and I am undesirable. That wasn't the only moment I had like that, obviously. I wouldn't be making this video if I only had one data point to go off of. I was always rejected and made to feel unwanted pretty much in every social situation. I've talked about this in other videos, but there was a group of kids my age that would always ride bikes and play together in my neighborhood, and I tried to go hang out with them a couple times, but eventually they just told me I can't hang out with them, and they all called me gay and everything. This was after one of them did come over to my house to play PlayStation, but then we got in a fight when I tried to show him Legend of Legaia because I guess he thought that was a loser game. It's actually a critically acclaimed classic JRPG, but hey, what do I know? I was the ugly, fat loser kid. I couldn't be trusted to recommend a new game. Another brutal memory I have was in the 8th grade. It was my first year at a new school. I had been in a small private school up till then. Then I went to public school because my parents couldn't afford the private school anymore. And also, we were planning to move soon. But anyways, I wasn't noticeably overweight anymore at that point because I had had a growth spurt. So I was pretty tall for my age. But I still had bad teeth. And I had pretty bad acne at the time. And I was just extremely shy. That was probably the peak of my social anxiety. But yeah, I remember one time in, I'm pretty sure it was woodshop class actually, but we weren't in the shop that day. We were in the classroom. Everyone was talking about the homecoming dance coming up. And this one extremely extroverted guy that sat in front of me, he turned around and he asked me if I was going, and I was like, no. So then he made it his mission to get me a date. He was like, dude, you gotta go. All you gotta do is ask a girl to go with you. I'll show you. So then he was going up to every girl in the class one by one, asking them if they'd go to homecoming with me. And I was just sitting there. I couldn't even hear all of the responses because he was walking around the room going up to every single girl. But I remember he wasn't making it clear that this was something he decided to do. So he was asking all these girls if they would go to the dance with me, but I think most of them probably thought I had told him to ask them out for me. It was probably like, I don't know, I want to say it was like 7 or 8 girls that he asked in total. All of them said no, of course. But I remember at least 2 of the girls he asked were just like, who? Like, they didn't even know who I was. And I'm in the class with them at that very moment, and they didn't know who I was by name. We were in the same class all year. And I remember one of those girls was in most of my classes that year, and she had no idea who I was. Or maybe she was just acting like she didn't know who I was. But either way, it was brutal. I should have shut that shit down from the start, but I was so shy, I didn't know how to tell the guy to stop. But I remember the first girl he asked, it was this girl of very ill repute that sat in front of him. So she was 2 seats in front of me. Her nickname was Lucy Goosey. I'm not making that up. That's what everybody called her. Not to her face. That's what they called her behind her back. They called her Lucy Goosey. But he asked Lucy Goosey if she would go to the dance with me. And she just looked at me and she was like, no. Then her and her friend that was sitting next to her laughed. And the guy looked to her friend and he was like, what about you? And she was like, I don't think so. And I remember the guy was acting all shocked, like, what? Why not? What's the big deal? And she just kind of turned around and she was like, just stop. Just stop. So, yeah, I got rejected by literally every girl in my class. Some of them were nice about it, but some of them seemed to be gravely offended. I get that the guy was trying to do something nice for me. I don't hold it against him, but man, that was brutal. But yeah, that's how it was for my entire adolescence. Just constantly being reminded how unwanted I am. And that had a lasting effect on my self-esteem. And I think that's why I have such severe social anxiety. I do think I am naturally shy. Like, I would still have social anxiety to some degree, no matter what. But being treated like I'm a goblin, since as far back as I can remember, I'm pretty sure that made it worse. Because when I was around 16, I did have a glow up. I got a better haircut, and I started working out. I started dressing better. I got my braces off, so my teeth were all straight. I definitely did improve my looks by a lot. Honestly, even today, if I still had a full head of hair, I'm pretty sure this channel would never exist. I don't think I'd be like a PSL God Slayer Chad or anything, but I would definitely be better looking than I am now. But yeah, around 16, I had a glow up. Maybe more than just a glow up, because I had a couple times where girls pretty much just threw themselves at me. I'm not going to repeat those stories here because I've already talked about all those moments, I think. But the thing is, my self-esteem was so low from growing up being ugly, I never realized what was happening in the moment. I thought they were making fun of me or something. Like this girl in my driver's ed class, literally one of the hottest girls in my school, she started rubbing my leg with her foot under the table, and she tried talking to me after class, and I just completely fumbled it. I probably could have very easily hooked up with her, but I couldn't see it at the time what was going on because I was still mentally, then and now, I am still mentally the overweight, ugly kid that remembers getting called gross when I tried to give a ring to my crush. And I just couldn't make the right words come out my mouth. Even when I started to realize, like, oh, wait, maybe she is actually coming on to me. This is really happening. I just couldn't capitalize on it. I just panicked and I just couldn't act normal. And still today, I can't act normal. I don't know how. Now, how much of this is nature versus nurture? That I don't know. But I'm pretty sure those early experiences facing rejection and ridicule from my peers probably contributed significantly to my social anxiety and my lack of social skills. And you can say all you want that I just need to get over it and move on, but that's what I'm trying to say. It's not possible. You can't just move on when you spent the first 15 years or more of your life just constantly having it reinforced that you're ugly and you don't fit in and nobody wants you around. If you didn't have that experience, it's easy to say, oh, just move on, bro. Just get over it, bro. But it's not like I'm just constantly sitting there replaying these moments in my mind. Most days I don't think about any bad memories at all. Like, it's not at the forefront of my mind, but it's just so deeply ingrained from years and years of rejection when my mind was still at its most malleable. It's just ingrained in my being. It's part of who I am. I don't know how else to explain it. For me, the worst effect is the lasting impact on the level of social anxiety I have. I will never not experience an intense feeling of impending doom anytime I have to interact with someone in a novel situation. Now, I can order food at a restaurant or I can buy my groceries at the grocery store without any trouble. Simple little interactions like that, I'm just used to it enough that that's usually easy for me. But anything that's not something I have to do all the time, or especially if I have to ask someone for something that's maybe not completely standard, that's really difficult for me. And I really struggle anytime I'm in a professional environment, like back when I worked as an engineer in a corporate office. I think maybe it's because that corporate structured environment on some subconscious level makes my brain think like, oh shit, we're back in middle school. So I just revert to being back at my peak levels of social fear. And something else I wanted to talk about, sometimes it's not just outright cruelty that reminds me how undesirable I am. And this happened a lot when I was a kid too, but it still happens even as an ugly adult. Some people, they don't treat me badly necessarily, but they act like I'm a sick puppy, basically. Or they'll act like I'm literally disabled, which, being ugly pretty much is a disability, but, it doesn't feel good when you're trying to, ask where something is at a store, and the lady working there is treating you like you're a Make-A-Wish kid or something. Like, oh my God, let me help you, you poor thing. The Hot Pockets are in the freezer section. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never experienced it. But a good example, there was a reality show version of Squid Game, and one of the guys competing on the show was this obese, stereotypically nerdy, bald guy. I'll put a picture of him on the screen. From the start, you could tell how the other contestants, especially the women, were all treating this guy like he's a helpless little baby. He was kind of playing into it, I think, but still, he's a grown man. And these people were acting like he's a child. There was a part where they had to do this game where it involved people on the other teams deciding who they want to throw a ball to. And if you missed the catch, then you would both be eliminated. The thrower and the catcher would be eliminated. But it was a limited number of balls. So one possible strategy would be to try to not have anybody throw the ball to you, and you could just wait it out. And each team would line up in an order that they decided. That's where the strategy came in, because the ball could only be thrown to the person on each team who was currently in front of the line. So this other guy on the Nerd Guys team, he was just trying to say, hey, we should put this guy up front because nobody's going to want to risk throwing to him because he looks very unathletic. And immediately everybody jumped all over this guy and was like, hey, stop being a bully. That is not okay. And it's like, no, what he was saying made sense. That was a perfectly viable strategy. But people just can't help but infantilize ugly men. Sometimes. Usually ugly guys just get treated like they're disgusting, but the overly sympathetic treatment where you get treated like a helpless, disabled child, that also happens sometimes. And that doesn't feel good either. It makes you feel like something's wrong with you, like you're defective. But that's how people act when they want everyone to know how good a person they are. They can't just act normal and treat you like you're a normal human being. They got to act like you're a little baby and they are the heroic Mother Teresa figure that's going to make it all better with their overbearing sympathy. So everyone on the show was ganging up on this guy for daring to come up with a reasonable strategy. People online were also demonizing the guy. And then guess what happened? Whenever someone did end up throwing the ball to the nerdy guy, it was a perfect throw, but of course he dropped it. So he got eliminated along with the dumbass that threw him the ball. So maybe that's not the best example. That's a reality TV show. The whole thing could have been scripted for all I know. But I just wanted to mention how even when an ugly guy isn't being treated like he's a monster, a lot of the time that's because it's just as bad in the other direction. And he's getting treated like he's a child with leukemia. And, I guess that's probably better than the alternative. I guess I would rather be treated with extreme sympathy than extreme vitriol. But just speaking for myself, I just want people to treat me with a basic level of respect, which is how I always try to treat people. I don't want special treatment. I don't want sympathy. And obviously, I don't want to be treated like I'm some kind of disgusting monster. That's all. I just want to be treated normal. That's all I got to say about that. If you feel like anything I said here resonates with you, please consider watching some of my other videos. There's also some secret videos you can watch for free on my Patreon. Videos YouTube does not want you to see. There's no sign up required. You can just watch the videos. We also have a private Discord server now for Patreon members, so that's there if you're interested. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.